Hi, I'm Erik Hall. I'm the digital sports editor at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and I'm joined by Bill Dwyre, that was the APSE president in 1988, 89, while at the Los Angeles Times. Thanks for joining me, Bill.
Happy to be here, Eric. Thank you.
So how'd you get involved with APSE?
I was a sports editor at the Milwaukee Journal, and I just met some people that told me APSC was a good thing. I kind of kind of am a joiner anyway. I like organizations. I saw what APME was doing, and we were kind of a mirror of that. And it was all good. It was an opportunity to meet people and do things and be part of an important group, and so I joined.
Yeah. How'd you go from joining to then moving up to being president of the organization?
Well, part of that is if you're a sports editor of the Los Angeles Times, you have a profile that helps. I think that I was pretty active, even in Milwaukee, and then when I moved to Los Angeles, I remained active. And I'm not sure the politics of those things. I think I was active on a regional level. And pretty soon somebody came up and said, maybe we ought to run you for president. And I mistakenly nodded, and there we were.
What are some things you're proud of that you achieved while you were in leadership of and president of APSE?
You know, it's funny. I'm proud of the organization and how it grew. I'm proud of the how the meetings grew. I think that I had a lot to do or something to do with making the conventions a little more entertaining. I know at one time I brought a comic friend of mine to Las Vegas, and he did a stand-up bit, and I thought that the conventions, and I think I had a role in this, became more appealing to a lot of people, and they brought their families, and it became a good thing. I was also, to this day, I remain proud of something that'll probably surprise you, but I was very anti-contest. And Dave Smith and Dave Smith was the sports editor of the Dallas Morning News, very powerful guy, very great section that he put out. And we both became kind of the squeaky wheel in this whole contest situation. We would enter and we would win or lose or whatever, but we feared that it got to the point where the tail was wagging the dog, that our identity was the contest and nothing else or little else. And so we fought hard on that. And as you can tell, we lost. But I don't think we ever wanted to do away with the contest as much as we wanted to revise the rules and revise the procedures so that it would be less all consuming and less totally identifiable with what APSE was. So I'm still kind of proud of that. I fought the battle, lost, but I'm proud of it.
What did APSE ideally look like to you then?
Well, it looked like a bunch of hard driving, uh, very qualified, very talented young journalists. They were all young. I mean, Jim Murray worked for me. He won the award the second year, and he wasn't young, but he was, God only knows, he was talented. So it was a bunch of people who were dedicated to bettering sports journalism. It was very pure in those days. We weren't fighting corporate takeovers or layoffs or things like that. It was a golden age, and we could spend some money. We all had some money to spend, and we traveled and we recruited from each other, and in essence, we all got together and tried to make sports coverage better. And by better, I mean ethical, um, more enterprising. Uh, we love to be the paper that dug up the good story, uh, the hard charging story. An example I always told my guys, it was mandatory at the Los Angeles Times that the week of the Super Bowl or one of the 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, we would do something involving journalism because everything else was hype. And I noticed just yesterday that the Washington Post did just that. They went back and reviewed how the NFL has handled the retirees and the injured retirees and the people who need some help from the disability caused by playing in the NFL. And that's journalism. That isn't just going and listening to some player sit on a podium and talk about the good old days and how wonderful everything is. So we did a lot of that, and if one of us did it, it would be an example for somebody else to pick it up and run with it, and we were setting examples for each other all the time, and that really took center stage with all of us. It was a good time in those days.
Yeah. You talked about bringing a stand-up to a convention. Are there any other memories from conventions you helped put on or particularly attended that stick out to you?
I do remember getting Lou Holtz to be the speaker in St. Louis and getting all his demands and fearing that it wouldn't be worth the effort, and driving out to the little airport where his plane landed and looking at my watch and thinking we had a half an hour to get back downtown to the hotel and get him on stage, and got him in the car. His plane landed, got him in the car, and Lou was trying out all his material on me, and I had heard it many times before. I'm a Notre Dame grad, so I'd heard it many times before. But I remember walking into the room where he was to speak just as everybody was settling down. It was just on the money, and I was very pleased with it. And he was funny and good. He was typical Lou Holtz. So I do remember that. I remember a lot of things. Just dealing with a lot of people and the negotiations going on in the hallways, and it was a good time, and I'm pleased to have been part of it.
Yeah. In 1996, you won the Red Smith Award. What do you remember about that experience, winning and then receiving the award?
I remember getting the call from, I think it was Dave Smith, who won previously to me. I remember being thrilled, and I remember always thinking that award probably would be better served going to a writer. In those days, I wasn't doing much writing, and when I stopped being sports editor, I spent my last 10 years as a sports columnist. I would have felt better getting it then, but it was for contributions, and you can make contributions as an editor. And I was honored. I was pleased. I was a little bit surprised. You never have a sense of yourself like perhaps other people have a sense of you. So I remember making the acceptance speech, having my daughter there, my wife, and it was a big honor. And now when I occasionally look at the list, it's Red Smith Award time, and I vote. It's rather overwhelming to see the names that are on there, and overwhelming to see that I'm still alive because a lot of them aren't.
Yeah. This is the 50th year of APSE. I heard for the 25th year they tried to get all the past presidents together in 1998. Were you able to attend that and be a part of that?
I don't remember. I think I was.
Yeah.
I think I was. No, I was talking before about various spicing up the convention, and you asked me if I had any other memories. In 1983, it was 1983, we decided, I was new in Los Angeles, and I had a deputy sports editor by the name of Dave Moylan, and instead of having just a regular honors dinner, we recruited a bunch of Hollywood movie stars and put them in a hotel in Santa Monica, and I think we had almost one for each table, and it was a wild time. And, I do remember that. APSE was not just sitting around talking about how to figure out an earned run average. There was a lot of fun, and in 1998, where was this?
It may have been Richmond. Is that possible? I don't remember. I'm just doing these interviews. A couple people have mentioned that they for the 25th that they've tried to get all the past presidents together for the conference. And I think somebody said Richmond was where it was.
I don't remember ever being in Richmond, Virginia, but
Okay.
for the 25th anniversary, I would have tried.
Yeah,
Sorry, I just don't remember.
it's fine. What you mentioned the movie stars. Do you remember any of the movie stars that you got to come to the convention and be at the tables there?
I remember one guy.
Okay.
He's the guy who's now on America Has Talent. He's
Howie Mandel?
Howie Mandel.
Okay.
He was an absolute jerk.
Oh wow.
And he was making demands and sitting at our table and sitting at one of the tables, and he kept grousing about having to do this. And a lot of these guys were set up by their agents,
Yeah.
to thinking they get some exposure from sports editors, which was going to be limited anyway. But
Yeah.
most of the people had a great time. I don't remember too many of the others, but I remember Howie Mandel acting a little bit like a jerk.
Huh. What did APSE mean to you professionally during your career?
Everything. It allowed me to have a great recruiting base. I saw everybody that was in the business. Not everybody. I mean, the reporters weren't there at conventions, but the talk of their reporters was often there at conventions. And somebody would say, "This guy's pretty good. You ought to look at him." And I did some recruiting, and everybody else recruited too. I mean, it wasn't any kind of secret. This was part of APSE. If you saw somebody good, recruited them. I remember meeting a guy named Jim Hodges, who was a sports editor in Bakersfield. I thought he was solid and good, and I had a position in a year or so that demanded somebody solid and good, and I hired Jim Hodges, and he worked for me for quite a long time, both as an inside desk man and ended up covering hockey and doing some good work.
Yeah. What are some of the personal relationships you gained from being involved with APSE?
Dave Smith was one of them. Dave was a good friend. And he was a guy that shared a lot of my views. We were absolutely, totally opposites in the way we ran our sports section. Dave Smith had a sports section at the Dallas Morning News that didn't miss anything. There was more agate in there than you can imagine. He got all the information necessary. And if you were a reader in the Dallas area and you wanted to know about the polo scores from Santa Barbara, he had it. And he used to drive Terry Taylor at the AP crazy because if all the summaries weren't there in time for his deadline, he'd be on the phone to her. I ran a sports section a little more loosely, and I cared more about the writers and the quality of the writing. Not that Dave didn't care about that, but
Yeah.
I had more star writers than he did, and I let them go a little bit. Dave had a shorter leash than I did, but we were good friends. Eddie Storin meant a lot to me, though he recently died. He tried to hire me in Miami as his replacement as sports editor. He was moving up to a deputy managing editor or something, and we became very good friends. I played golf with him in Florida for years, and Eddie was, again, the ultimate APSE person. He was a good man, a solid man. He had good sense. I think he ran APSE after he retired for a while and ran the conventions. Sandy Bailey at the Washington Post was a good friend. George Solomon ran a tight ship at the Washington Post, but he had a lot of talented writers, and you kind of played off each other with all these people. Don Squire in Boston, Don had some great people, and so their ideas and their thoughts kind of became your thoughts. You didn't steal them, but you used them to polish what you were doing. The friendship was there, and the individual personnel skill was there, and and you thrived on it. You lived in the midst of it. APSE was wonderful. I think it probably is the same way today.
Yeah. What advice would you have for future presidents of APSE as an organization?
Well, my advice would be to take a look at the contest.
Yeah.
And don't let the contest define what APSE is. And I think it does right now. Take a look at important areas. Run some convention programs that address things other than the obvious, like how do we cover the preps, and how do we fight management when they're screwing with us on deadline, things like that. Go back and look at ethics. Go back and look at a big issue in this country, which is going to be big. It's big now, but it's going to be bigger. Sports gambling. Suddenly it's legal. I fought that for years, even putting gambling information in my section. It wasn't legal, so why do it? And I probably was wrong in a lot of ways. I became kind of known as the anti-gambling guy. But look at that. Look at those things. If APSE would become, and it may be now, I'm not there enough. I'm an occasional regional meeting, but APSE becomes a crusader for something strongly important in journalism, in sports journalism specifically, and journalism in general. I think it would make everybody additionally proud of the organization. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah. How are you spending your days now?
I'm your basic old retired guy, I guess. I still do some writing for the LA Times. I just wrote a piece that they're about to publish, I believe, on LeBron James breaking the scoring record. I wrote a piece about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being number 2 and how this guy deserves us not to forget about him because he's number 2. And I go back with Kareem to Milwaukee, so I have a lot of background, covered a lot of the Milwaukee Bucks games and titles and fist fights and all sorts of things. And Kareem is I do a lot of that in an appreciation of Kareem because he's a special person. He grew up right before our eyes, played basketball for 20 years in the NBA. We knew him at Power Memorial in New York before he even got to be really big. And I do stuff like that. So you ought to not forget this guy, and this is what he was. So I'm probably writing once a month. I never stopped wanting to write. I write for a magazine in the desert called Palm Springs Life. And I haven't disassociated myself from the business as much as many of my peers. I was not the kind of guy it was time for me to retire. I knew it. In my last 10 years, I spent a lot of time covering things like Wimbledon and the British Open. And I realized near the end that I just couldn't get around fast enough at the British Open to get through that heavy grass. I'm not going to sit in the press room and right off a TV when I'm traveled 4,000 miles to get over there. So maybe I'm having trouble disassociating, but maybe I don't want to. So I still follow things very closely, and I do play a lot of golf. It's mandatory when you retire. And fortunately, my health is still pretty good. And so that's your answer.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to add about your experience with APSE or any other memories you want to share?
It just was a golden era. And I don't know that APSE can ever get back to that golden era. Not that it's not good or not trying, but its management is such that we have more newspapers owned by people wanting to make money rather than people wanting to do good journalism. And that's difficult. And I hope that APSE can take a stance where without losing their job, and stand up to it a little bit and stand up to these people. I found that over the years, even at the Los Angeles Times, when I would get a ridiculous request, one time one of the editor came to me and said, why don't we cut back on our deadline time and be off the floor at 10:15 at night? And of course, that's ridiculous. And I had a moment of inspiration where I said, you know, we can do that easily because we'll just have the Dodger and Angel writers send in a prediction of the final score in the seventh inning. And then we'll run a little consensus box like they do in horse racing to see who's the better picker. And that'll be fine. It'll really make the paper. And he walked away from me and never said another word. So you need to stand up to some of these guys who are in positions of authority, but don't really have the common sense to have gained that position, if you know what I mean. So I'd like to see, I guess, more guts in APSE, and that's easy for me to say. It's not my job on the line, but my job was on the line several times when I did things like that.
Yeah.
And, establish yourself so that you're invaluable enough so you can say what you mean and say what you need to say.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time, Bill. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Erik, for thinking of me, and I hope everybody at APSE continues to fight the good fight.
Thanks so much.